a story of democracy and dictatorship. A man who silenced all oppositions. A leader whose propaganda controlled heart and minds. The architect of a nation on the edge of a war. Buckle up. This is the second part of our Hitler's trilogy. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to a new episode of Past with a Punchline. In the last episode, we discussed how Hitler rose to power using the democratic system. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the rulership of Adolf Hitler, how he won Germans' heart, and how he crushed all of his opponents. In 1933, Germany started its transition from a democracy into a dictatorship. Despite the existence of a constitution and elections, power became monopolized. Opposition was crushed, and the Nazi Party started its journey towards total control. Hitler controlled the masses, the media, and even the streets. He believed that controlling the streets was key to controlling the country. Hitler's rise to power was far from automatic. He faced multiple obstacles: limited parliamentary support, opposition parties, internal party conflicts, economic crisis, and lack of full army support. The Nazi Party didn't hold majority in the Reichstag, the German parliament. Social Democrats, Communists, and other parties still held influence, and they could potentially oppose his moves. In addition, some parts inside the Nazi Party, like the SA, the Stormtrooper, Hitler's own militia, had their own ambition, and they could potentially challenge Hitler's authority. Germany was also still recovering from the Great Depression, and the economy wasn't doing so well. Unemployment, inflation, and poverty made governance very challenging. On top of all that, the army distrusted the SA and saw them as a threat. And without the army backing, Hitler could not fully control the state. Even without majority support, Hitler used strategic maneuvering, propaganda, in addition to controlling the streets, to overcome all of these obstacles. On the night of February 27, 1933, the Reichstag caught fire. The fire was initially set by a Dutch communist as an act of opposition to Germany's policies, the inflation, and the spread of fascism. Some people suspected that Hitler himself orchestrated the fire and blamed it on the communists, portraying them as a real threat to the nation. The fire allowed him to suspend civil liberties, arrest opposition leaders, and justify extraordinary emergency powers. The fire became the perfect tool to eliminating the communist threat and other intimidating parties. With the Reichstag weakened, Hitler started to look for more authorities to control the country without parliamentary support. And 1 month after the fire, he started pushing for the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act would give him power to pass laws without the approval of the parliament, which would give him ultimate power. To achieve this, Hitler and his allies used propaganda and threats to sway undecided parties. They brought in SA soldiers to stand in the hall holding weapons and glaring. Many communist deputies were banned from attending, and the socialists were threatened. He also assured the centered and the conservative parties to respect private properties and maintain traditional institutions. On March 23, 1933, the Reichstag voted 444 votes in favor and 94 against. The Enabling Act was passed, and Hitler was given absolute power. And from this moment forward, he could govern without the parliament, and Germany turned from a binary republic into a dictatorship. After getting rid of the parliament, Hitler turned his attention to the second obstacle, the army. Initially, Hitler didn't have the support of the army. The SA, or the Stormtroopers, led by Ernst Röhm, had grown into a massive paramilitary forces. The army feared that Röhm's ambition and the power of the SA could destabilize the state and overtake the actual army. By June 1934, tension reached a breaking point, and Hitler had to choose: either lose the army support or eliminate the SA. He acted decisively in what came to know later as the Night of the Long Knives. Hitler ordered the purge of Röhm and the leaders of the SA forces. Other political opponents who could challenge him were either arrested or executed. More than 200 persons were killed in cold blood that night. The operation was a clear message. Opposition, inside or outside, will not be tolerated. After the purge, President Hindenburg declared Hitler as a national hero and thanked him for saving the German nation. And the army pledged loyalty to Hitler. With the enabling act secured, opposition silenced, and the full support of the army, Hitler's dominance was clear. And when President Hindenburg died in August 1934, Hitler merged the position of the president and the chancellor together, giving him absolute powers. The German people were giving a referendum to approve this move. And through propaganda and elimination of any opponent, Hitler was voted as the Führer of Germany, officially cementing his power as the absolute leader. And from this point on, Germany was no longer a democracy. It had become a totalitarian state entirely controlled by Hitler and the Nazis. After becoming Führer, Hitler's focus shifted to consolidating control and transforming Germany according to Nazis' ideology. One of the key strategies to gain popularity was investing in infrastructure. The Nazis launched public work projects including highways, bridges, and railway. Unemployment, which had been a major crisis, was tackled through these projects. Approximately 125,000 people were employed in the early stages of these projects. These efforts created a sense of national pride and progress, giving ordinary Germans a tangible benefits from the new regime. Studies suggest that visible improvement in the infrastructure and industry significantly increased public support for the Nazis. The Autobahn system became a symbol of efficiency and modernity. The car industry was encouraged, making automobiles more accessible to the average German. And for many citizens, these projects were a proof about the ability of the Nazis to bring back economic stability. The Nazis also understood that controlling public opinion is as important as controlling the institutions. As Ministry of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels made sure that radios, films, and newspapers all reflected Nazis' idea. Opposition medias were shut down and dissenting voices were silenced. Propaganda glorified all the action of the Nazis and pictured Hitler as the savior of the nation. It highlighted economical revival, national pride, and military strength. The combination of visible improvements and the constant propaganda made the opposition nearly impossible. People began to associate Hitler personally with the nation's success. Eliminating the political left was essential for Hitler, who viewed communists and socialists as a top threat for him and to his vision of a centralized Germany. The Reichstag Fire was already blamed on the communists, providing a reason to arrest thousands of them. The Communist Party was banned, its leaders imprisoned, and supporters were sent to concentration camps. And this effectively neutralized the political opposition. Social Democrats and other social groups were targeted as well, and their union were dissolved. Even the elimination of the SA leadership during the Night of the Long Knives also had anti-socialist dimension. Ernst Röhm and the SA leadership supported the idea of a second revolution. They wanted to implement more socialist reforms, redistribute wealth, and give more rights to workers. By purging the SA leadership, Hitler removed the last internal socialist threat, securing the Nazi Party's direction towards nationalism rather than socialist reforms. After eliminating the left-wing threats, Hitler found a new target, one that he would blame for every failure or every problem: the Jews. After World War I, Hitler and many Germans felt humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. He blamed Jews for the defeat of Germany, labeling them as internal enemies who stabbed the nation and the army in the back. And from 1933 onward, the Nazis systematically targeted the Jews. They used a combination of laws, social threats, and violence to eliminate them from the society. Boycotts of Jewish businesses were implemented almost immediately after Hitler came to power, aiming to exclude Jews from economic life. Jewish professionals like teachers, doctors, and lawyers were gradually barred from their professions. And anti-Jewish propaganda pictured Jews as the public enemy and blaming them for the economic crisis. They were also stripped of citizenship and lost their political rights. Intermarriages and relations between Jews and non-Jews were prohibited, codifying racial segregation, but no violence yet. On November 9 and 10, 1938, a coordinated wave of violence swept across Germany and Austria. Synagogues were burned, Jewish homes and businesses were destroyed, and cemeteries vandalized. Approximately 30,000 Jews were arrested and sent to concentration camps. In addition, the government imposed collective fines and reparation on the Jewish community. These actions and policies isolated Jews socially, economically, and politically, laying the foundation for the Holocaust. History teaches us that democracy isn't just a system, it's fragile. It's built on trust, laws, and people speaking up. Dictators don't always come with tanks and blood. Sometimes they come with jobs, slogans, and the illusion of hope. And when fear wins, freedom loses. So be aware and stay tuned, because in the next episode we will discuss the final part of the Hitler trilogy, World War II, and how Hitler's dream caused the death of 60 million people. This is the end of today's episode. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any more ideas for me to cover up in the next episodes, please leave it in the comments. Until next time.